Well, my guest today is Sarah Davison, who presented such shows as Playdays, Model Millie, Fun Song Factory, and Tyan Creo. So please welcome Sarah Davison. So hi, Sarah, and thank you ever so much for taking part. My first
Oh,
question:
it's a pleasure, Ben.
how do you get to be in the theatre and TV business?
Oh, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Doesn't everyone want to know that? And I wish I had an easy answer. I think really, I mean, you've interviewed lots of presenters, haven't you? Lots of
Yeah,
actors on this, and you
yeah,
yourself love doing all of that too.
yeah.
It's a combination of things, but mostly it's luck. I mean, I like everyone, I did amateur acting. Excuse me, we're in the city here, lots of traffic noise. Um, I did lots of amateur dramatics when I was a kid. I did theatre from a tiny age, and I always was a terrible show off, like many
Mm-hmm.
actors. But then it was just a kind of lot of luck, really. I worked my way through amateur theatre, got into professional theatre in New Zealand, which is where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was lucky to get into a soap opera there, a sort of dramatic soap opera, which I did for years. And then I came with the money I saved from that. I came and toured around Europe. Oh, I also worked in theatre a lot. And so I was a professional actor in New Zealand. And then when I came over to London, as many Kiwis did in the 80s, I, of course, had to start from scratch again. So I worked as a waiter. That was quite tough after working in telly, having to start again. But it's good for knocking the ego, stops you thinking you're better than anyone else. And started again doing, at first it was anything I could get. So I did Covent Garden Community Theatre because I'm a musician and I play a lot of instruments pretty poorly, but I do play a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I got in doing Covent Garden Community Theatre,
Mm-hmm.
Fringe Theatre, and then a contact of my sister's actually who worked at, you see, there's the other thing, contacts are always very useful,
Mm-hmm.
who worked at Felgate Productions, a newly set up under fives programming department of the BBC. I got an audition for that. I had to audition several times, and it wasn't easy. We had to improvise,
Mm-hmm.
telling stories for the camera. It was fun, and we were doing it with oh God, I can't remember his name, James Jameson, wonderful director who was very helpful. Anyway, an ex-Play School presenter and director who helped us and developed us as presenters. That's how I got into being onto the telly as a presenter. I loved it, obviously.
That was Playdays, or aka
Yeah,
Play.
that was Playdays. Yeah, it was the Playdays. Cynthia Falgate used to be a big producer of young children's programs at the BBC. And when the new rules came in the late 80s, they had to chop some of that off and make it into an independent company. So she set up her own. It was a sort of special deal, it has to be said, but it was an independent company, and all her programs went to the BBC and we made directly for the BBC. But that's when I got my chance. And then I made over 200 programs for Playdays. I presented different programs. The Patch Stop. Initially, I was with Trish Cook and Ricky Diamond and many Will. There were lots of wonderful people on Sally Harvey, on we were initially on the roundabout stop. No, we weren't. It was the tent stop.
Yes.
You see, the memory, Ben, the memory. The tent stop, and then I ended up doing lots for Peggy Patch on the Patch Stop as well. And then of course, once you're in that group, you meet more people in that world, and so it goes. You end up doing more of those programs. That was a very long answer. My apologies.
What's it like performing on the tent stop and performing as Gladys Tut on the roundabout stop?
Gladys Tut, you've got a very good memory.
Mm.
Gladys Tut was possibly the part of my favorite role in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, I feel I've grown into Gladys Tootle. I was always Gladys Tootle inside.
Mm.
It was terrific fun, like it looks. I mean, there's no secrets. We giggled our way through many episodes, and we were really lucky because it was a lovely team of people who were behind the scenes and behind the camera, amazing makeup and lighting, and then obviously directing, and all the people who were backstage, as it were fantastic on all of those Playdays episodes. We giggled and we laughed so much we cried, literally, when we were making those programs. It was sheer joy.
Was it like traveling around the country and go to Austria on the patch stop?
Oh, goodness. that was great. I mean, that was luxurious. That was sort of very luxurious, being paid to go to Gold Egg and stay in a lovely chalet and make programs in the snow. It was great fun. I mean, it was very pinch me. I sort of quite often felt like, how did I get lucky enough, a little Kiwi from Christchurch, get lucky enough to be working here? I also did, I remember, yes, it was fantastic, is the short answer. And interesting to take Peggy away from Television Centre and from the studios we worked at in Wandsworth, actually, to record most of those programs, Capital Studios as it was then. Interesting to be on location. I mean, all Peggy's programs were on location. That was a very different experience from working in the studio. It was much more ad hoc and improvised. And again, a great team of people to work with, really lovely, fun, hardworking and great fun people.
Do you have a favourite place where you travelled on the patch stop?
Oh, favourite. I really loved being in the Outer Hebrides. We did, God, I can't even remember, Ben, whether it was 2 weeks or more that we did on the Outer Hebrides in the middle of the summer, making programs for Peggy. For me personally, because I'm half Scottish, I loved going up there, and I found the people just magnificent, and the wildness of it reminded me of New Zealand. Yeah, that was very special for me. Loved it. Loved the culture, loved being out on a fishing boat, loved the rawness of the landscape, and yeah, the people were great.
How did Model Millie came about, and what's it like performing it?
Oh, well, that was another piece of fabulous luck for me. Alison Stewart, who was a long-time director and then producer on BBC Children's. Forgive me if I'm making some mistakes about that. I think she did many jobs at the BBC, but she ended up doing that. And another wonderful woman, Kay Benbow, who's recently died, who was a stunning director as well and producer. I think it was Alison's idea, Model Millie, which she wrote with Philip. Can't remember Philip. Yeah, you probably know his name.
Yeah.
He was also an actor presenter, and he wrote some really great, kooky, quirky ideas. It was her idea or his idea, and I'm not sure exactly who started that particular one, but they set it up as a 10 program series. And again, that was a real highlight of my children's television career, because the sheer luxury of being in-house at the BBC and working with special effects who could come and have smoke coming at you. It was for Melbourne and Maureen's Musicograms, but the equivalent of that, turning a model town into something that was huge.
Yeah.
It was stuff that dreams are made of for me. Really wonderful. And being able to sing and work with Jonathan Cohen and Liz Kitchen and many other wonderful musicians who were behind the music. Really fun, really amazing experience. I feel truly privileged to have been there.
What do you think is the genre of Model Millie? Because it's sort of like part presenting, bit of education, bit of sitcom and panto, really.
Exactly, Ben. Couldn't put it better myself. What do you think? I mean, we were disappointed we didn't get another series. I think perhaps the tide had started to turn for children's television because of the lack of educational programs. Yes, it's very much in that kind of one foot in each camp, or many camps, as you say. It is quite panto. It's big. There's nothing subtle about the acting or the humor, but it does have educational content. It does. It's I perhaps obviously have rosy tinted view of that period of children's programming, but for me, it still had a sense of humor. It was still fun. It wasn't too didactic. It wasn't too dry. And small kids learned things, and you could safely leave any age child in front of the television without worrying about the content, but hoping they would engage with us. We tried very hard not ever to patronize our audience. It was a golden age because we weren't beholden to merchandising and marketing. It was all about making good programs.
When working with Playdays, you teamed up with Will Brenton and Ian Lachlan and Davison Phillips to present my favourite show of all time, The Fun Song Factory. How did that come about?
Why is that your favourite show, Ben?
I just loved it. I loved the music. It was a bright set, good colours, and I just love it. And I love it still today.
Oh, you a darling. That's very sweet. Yeah, that was that again, those people all came from Playdays. You know, Dave was a huge star and, you know, an amazing television personality, still is. And Will and Ian, yeah, they met during Playdays, and they're amazing creatively. You know, the theatrical background you can see very much in the Playdays format. It's quite theatrical. We had limited budget. You know, we weren't in a television studio. We were in a little theatre in South London. But it was the same energy and the same ideas. Liz doing the music, those guys coming up with their kind of quirky, unpatronizing take on children's entertainment. And I think it really worked, didn't it? I mean, it ran and ran. So I guess, yes, it was successful in its way with those classic ideas, combining nursery rhymes and traditional stuff with quirky, funny, irreverent humor, but not too risque. Yeah, that's what we did.
What was your memories and highlights of recording the Fun Song Factory?
Oh, it was really quite hard work because we had no money. Those guys, you know, we were a bit winging a prayer. And, you know, calling in favors, but we got paid. We all got paid. I remember it being quite hard work, but joyous again, because you're just working with these people who you've known for years and years, and there's a kind of trust and confidence and elements of fun, you know, naughty sense of humor. So we giggled a lot. It was probably I know it was very stressful for Will and Ian. They carried, it was their baby, and they did all the work, you know, and they had to make deadlines. But again, they were pulling on this group of people, the music, the presenters, the set design, everything, that were the people they knew already from years of working in children's television. And they went on to make Tweenies, as we know.
Yeah, and also it was like a fundraiser for the Preschool Learner Alliance as well.
Yes, absolutely. We had huge community support, which you really felt. I personally loved working with a live audience. I hadn't done that before. I've obviously, coming from a theatre background, I'd done tons of it, but not in that mixed media format. And I really like that, because you were actually reacting with the kids in real time, you know. It was great. That was, and with their mums and dads and carers and older brothers and sisters, that was really fun. I think that's a lovely thing to do.
Do you have a favourite video you did of the Fun Song Factory?
No, not really. The early ones were my favorites. Yeah. What were they? Remind me, Ben.
There was the first one,
Party Time at the Fun Song Factory. There's the Christmas one. What else do we do?
Nursery Rhyme.
Nursery Rhymes. What do you think's the best one?
I think they were all strongish in a way, I think.
What do you think's the interesting thing? What is it? What's the unique feature of Fun Song Factory that makes it for you special against any other children's telly or shows?
I think it was the music, I think. I think there was hardly anything like that.
Yeah, it was modern, wasn't it? Liz did an amazing job with the arrangements. She's, you know, she's a stunning composer and musician.
I think one of my favourites is the old MacDonald one.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, all those kids from Sylvia Young Drama School as well. They were lovely. Yeah. You know, I look back at that and I think I'm just tremendously lucky to have been involved in it, all of those projects that I did. Yeah, I don't know when I know that Fun Song Factory went on to become a television program, didn't it, afterwards? They changed some of the presenters and so on, which happens. What happened to the program after that? I never saw those further episodes that were made. What are they like? They're more like a studio version.
Yeah. So they're all very good.
Yeah. Ian and Will have got a boyish kind of, as well as being clever, they've got a wonderful boyish sense of humor and a kind of zany way of doing things, which came across, I think, in all of those. You know, they're fun. They're really fun for everyone. They're not patronizing fun. They're fun.
What's it like presenting Tyan and Creo?
That was really hard work. That was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. I replaced Sophie. Do you know Sophie? Sophie Aldred?
Yeah.
Who did it before me. Yeah, that was kind of, you can imagine going from the BBC, which was luxurious in terms of its what was available to us as presenters, as directors, what was there. We had amazing facilities, extraordinary studio crew, everything laid on. To go to Nickelodeon, which was it felt much lower budget. The time was concertina down, so we'd do, my goodness, Ruthless. I would have an ear set in my ear, and I would be there, and it would be while they were talking to me, Sarah turned to camera 3, and I'm having to spout stuff and improvise and work with tiny, big skin puppet next to me. You know, constantly constantly anticipating camera shots and working without stopping or with tiny, tiny pauses for hours in a row. So that was welcome to the world of commercial television, where you don't get public subsidies. It felt very different, much harder work. The pay was worse, the conditions were harder, lovely people who worked on it as well, but it felt very much like the poor cousin of working for BBC or for Channel 4, which I'd done, you know, was a very different experience.
I think Preschool Learner Alliance was part of that as well, Tyan.
Were they?
Yes.
You see, you know far more about it than I do, Ben. Yeah, quite likely. Well, they're quite involved in children's entertainment generally, aren't they? Very active. Yeah. I mean, yeah, tiny. It was all great stuff. It's just, it wasn't, you know, we're not looking at rehearsing in the old-fashioned way, an episode, adjusting it, having some days to sit in a rehearsal studio where you bump into Judi Dench and, you know, French and Saunders and the Loos, Pinch Me Again, and rehearsing and then performing, and you know, and having several studio days to do several episodes, and then you're straight on the set with Tyan and crew, kind of trying to memorize your scripts, people in your ear, live television feel about it. It's a very different setup. It requires a different skill level, and it's far more stressful.
Do you have any other favorite children's shows which you presented or performed in?
Oh, other favorite shows which I presented or performed. I think the first thing I ever did when I came to England, when my sister came a bit later than me, because she's also a performer, we did The Wandering Wetters. It was called a wetter is a New Zealand bug, and we did a little show that we devised ourselves, dressed as bugs for the Battersea Arts Centre for small kids, using some traditional New Zealand and Māori songs and traditional English, non-British English, Anglo-Saxon songs, nursery rhymes in the English language. And we did a funny little story about bugs where we walked around the audience. It was, in its way, it was rough, but it was a great thing to do. And that was for the theatre festival, Lift Theatre Festival, which used to run in the 80s at the Battersea Arts Centre. That you know, because I had a major stake in it, I'm very fond of. I also love doing panto. You know, I did panto with lots of people over the years. I'm not a huge fan of panto, but it was nice to see panto adjusting to more modern times and becoming less old-fashioned and women in high heels, and it was a bit more loose and a bit more fun and a bit more edgy, and I liked that. Other kids shows I did in when I came to live in Spain, in Barcelona, the first job I had to start again, and I did traveling English speaking theatre for 4 years. That was very hard work, but I also enjoyed that, having to perform for enormous groups of kids in gyms, and all Spanish and Catalan speaking, and trying to shut them up with your energy without losing your voice. Very challenging and very humbling experience as well.
What did you do after kids' TV in the late 90s?
Well, that's what I did. When I had kids in 98, I had my first son, and in 2001, my second son. So just after that, my partner got a job he's a journalist, and he went off he was trying to find a way for me to be with my sister who lived in Spain, because I found it really hard, Ben, to have kids in the early days. It was a huge change from being in charge of my own life. I adore working with children. I've always loved kids. It's very different when you become a parent. It's a really different experience. And I did find it hard, much as I adore my boys, who are both very grown up now. So starting again was hard. And I think I felt very isolated in London, which is so huge. I had no close friends with kids who lived near me. I would have probably forged those friendships if I'd stayed on. But I think Stephen, my partner, found a way of us moving to Spain. He got a job as the Times correspondent, and then the Guardian correspondent for Spain in Barcelona. So off we went, and you know, that was hard, starting again for the third time, but no regrets. because I've forged a career for myself as a voice artist in this country. So that's what I did. I worked as a children's actor in English at the same time as starting, which I'd done a bit in London before I left, doing English speaking videos for language learning, for documentaries. And then I went on to do that. So now that's my career, really, is a voiceover artist. And I do a mixture of guides to sell, to museums and art galleries and Gaudi buildings, to cartoons, which I direct the voices for and sometimes help cast. And I do a lot of voices. So I'm doing silly little kids' voices and grannies and hello and I'm stretching my vocal abilities constantly, doing silly voices and also doing BBC documentary voices where I have to be taken seriously. And so I do all of that, trying to disguise my Kiwi roots quite often. Sometimes I don't mind. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 odd years, would you believe? And performing in bands. I've got 3 musical groups that I perform with here. So that's where I have my fun. When I don't have to make money out of that, which is great.
Has anybody actually recognised you from England or from the show?
I have to work really hard these days. I've got, you might know me from, no, only with people who, like of your generation, who might possibly remember. They said very occasionally, well, after the second beer, go, do I know you? Very occasionally. My favourite story about being recognised was once in London, when I was in my local Sainsbury's, and I was often on children's telly and only ever recognised by kids, which is just so lovely because they're so transparent. They go, oh, it's Sarah off Playdays. No, that was for a while. I was never a big star, so it was never a problem. But once when I was in the local Sainsbury's, this kid and her older brother, I think it was, came up to me and went, oh, because I used to have long hair and I used to be younger. It's Julia Roberts. And then the little girl said, no, it's not. It's Sarah off Playdays. And that was better. For her, it was better. So I hang on to that. No, I did. The short answer is I don't get recognised ever, which is just the way I like it.
Do you think children's TV has changed when you did those shows?
Yeah, I think it's changed enormously. I'm now working on a show for good and bad, there's a massive amount out there. You've still got the old-fashioned educational or with an educational content, but being fun and relevant and engaging children's television. Because it's just, I was at that moment where it just became a different beast and became much more, there were just such a proliferation of different platforms and channels suddenly making all sorts of things. And it became much more commercial, obviously. We know about that. So that changed things radically, not always for the best, in my opinion. But I think there are some amazing products out there now. Claire Bradley's made all of her, the Peppa Pig series and all of that stuff's great, very much in the old style. But here in Spain and in Catalonia, we're making amazing stuff. There's a company called Playdays you might like to look at. I'll tell you what, Ben, when it comes out in English, I shall send it to you. They're making a series called Jasmine and Jambo, which is the most beautiful animation I have ever seen. It's old-fashioned style. It looks like an Aula clearing color scheme with beautifully crafted. The Catalans are fabulous at artwork, and they've made a beautiful, quirky music series using a voiceover artist in the original, which is in Catalan, who lives in Mallorca, and a local, extremely skilled young woman who's a singer. And the English version I'm directing with 2 fabulous voiceover artists who are based here. And that I'm really, really proud of. And I think there is some wonderful, wonderful quality stuff like that out there now. But I don't have young kids, so I'm not as aware as I was of just what's being screened, really, to be honest.
Nowadays, it's mainly like TikTok and YouTube now.
Well, exactly. With social media, I mean, I don't look at all that stuff, obviously, because it's not my market, really. But I think there's good and bad. Oh, we need control in some areas, obviously. And some of it's great. Without getting too political about it, I think clearly social media has run riot and needs to be put in some way. But the good stuff's great. The accessibility for anybody to make their own little fun videos at home. That's got to be good for creativity, doesn't it? It's got to be brilliant. So there are. I like seeing all this sort of the older women taking on modern songs and doing their own versions of it. And there is some wonderful stuff on social media that's highly entertaining.
Yeah, because I did a remake a few years ago of one of the Fun Song Factories, and
Did
it's on
you?
YouTube. Yes,
I shall have a look at it then.
yes, I did it with a friend of mine. I've done
Are you
two.
doing all the parts, Ben?
No, no, I've got a friend to do it. Oh,
Great. I'll have a look at that.
what's the best advice to somebody who wants to get into the business?
Oh, I wish I could help. You know, we all have our own journeys, don't we? And you look back from my great age and you think, God, I'm so lucky. Keep trying. I'm sure someone who's younger would say, put out your own videos, get your fans, get your viewing figures up, make your own thing, make it you, follow your heart and what you think's funny and works for you, and then try and that's the way in, isn't it? It's got to be the way in, by getting followers and then making a splash. I certainly couldn't do that. You have to be a business person these days, don't you? It's not something I've ever been any good at, and I suspect I wouldn't be any good at it if I was, young now trying to make it that way. That's the obvious route. Other than that, by working in children's theatre, the hard grind way would be working in children's theatre and panto and whatever exists out there in that world, and trying to make a name for yourself and get in that way as well. But if you really love doing it, just keep trying to do it. Just keep trying. Don't give up.
My last question is, what are you doing nowadays?
Well, I kind of said it before, but I'll say it again. I'm doing a mixture of things. I don't intend to retire, Ben. I'm going to fall over in front of a microphone and, that'll be goodbye. But I'm doing... Yesterday, I did video guides for a big modern art museum here. The day before, I was singing songs for a new cartoon series. I'm directing a cartoon series. And then today, I'm also doing audio guides for an Italian tour. That's my day job, is doing voiceover. And occasionally I do, car ads and well-paid commercials, but they're very much less of that, unfortunately. But I do enough to get by. And then I sing. And today I've got a rehearsal with Waiteki Town, who are my band. If you want to check us out on Facebook, you probably know about it. We just behave disgracefully. Me and another woman of my age. I do heavy metal ukulele. So I'm taking Deep Purple themes and silly nonsense like that, taking songs from yesteryear, the occasional original songs, and playing them with some wonderful musicians from Barcelona. So that's what I'm up to.
Well, thank you ever so much for taking part.
Oh, pleasure.
And I just want to say thank you for being part of my childhood.
Oh, Ben, that's lovely. It's lovely to be here. It's lovely to see you in person. And thank you for being tenacious at hanging in with the emails and are you available? Because I don't mean to be, but life is busy,
And hopefully I'll go do one with Ian Lachlan as well.
Are you? Have you not had Ian on yet?
No, I'm going to at some point.
Right. Well, you need to get him here, don't you?
Yes.
Send him my love.
Do like a face-to-face one, really.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yes.
That would be great. Get him on. It's lovely to talk to you. It's lovely to meet you.
You're very welcome.
Really nice to think back, because you've brought back a lot of memories for me, just talking about it.
And also brings back lower memories for me as well.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you love that work. Obviously, that's why we do it,
Thank you so much.
Lovely to meet you, Ben.
Nice to meet you. Bye.
Bye.